To this point, we've been focusing on AutoCAD tools that create geometry. Now we're going to talk about tools that modify geometry. Most of these tools are going to exist over here in this Modify section of the Home ribbon. The first two we're going to talk about are Move and Copy. To demonstrate that, I'm going to go back to this example and I'm going to take a little bit different strategy in how I draw it. First, we'll create some lines to create the outside of the figure. Now before, I had to draw a construction line to locate my circles accurately. Well, here's a different way of doing it. I'm going to pick circle, diameter. I'm going to draw the circle right here at this endpoint. And then I'm going to use the move command to move it into position accurately. So I select move. Note AutoCAD is prompting me how to use the command. First, it wants me to select the objects to move. I'm going to pick this circle. I could pick more than one object if I needed to. I'm going to right click to tell it I'm done selecting objects. Then it asks me to select a base point. I'm worried about where the center of the circle is going to be, so I'm going to select the center as the base point. Notice that object snaps are helping me find that center accurately. And then AutoCAD prompts me to locate the final position of that base point. Of course, I can click to do that, but that wouldn't be accurate. Here's an opportunity for me to use my relative coordinates, just like we used with lines. So I'm going to type at 1, 1. That should move the circle 1 unit in the X and 1 unit in the Y. Press enter, and now our circle's located. If we want to double check to make sure it turned out the way we wanted it to, we can. Copy works very similarly to move. Select copy. Select the object you want to copy. Right click. Select a base point. Now in this case, just to show a different way of doing it, I'm going to turn on ortho mode. That means I'm going to accurately move the hole or copy the hole in the X direction. And I'm going to type 1, press enter. That gives me my second hole. And we can double check that the holes are exactly 1 inch apart. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Ultimately, it comes down to how you choose to draw and what your preference is. One more note about move. You don't always have to use the move command to move things. If I want to, I can select geometry and I can just drag that geometry around with the mouse. When I need to move things by not a precise distance very quickly, that's a really effective tool. However, it's not accurate. So if you're trying to place geometry accurately, definitely use the move or the copy as needed. One more modify tool while we're here is fillet and chamfer. A fillet is simply a small rounded edge to break a corner, make a corner not sharp. And the tools are here. Fillet and chamfer are under the same drop down. So for example, let's say I want to put a 1/4 inch radius on these two corners. I'll select fillet. Now the funny thing about the fillet command is if you follow the prompts, says, well, select the first object, all right, select the second object, but nothing happened. And it's kind of a quirky feature of the fillet command is when you first launch AutoCAD, the fillet radius is set to 0. So to get around that, we say fillet, and then we type, if you notice down here at the bottom, you've got some options. You can type U, P, R, T, or M to get to the options. I'm going to type the R option for radius and press enter. Now fillet is asking me for what radius do I want. I said I wanted a 0.25 radius, so I type that in and press enter. Now I select the first line, select the second line. You notice before you even click, it gives you a little preview of what that fillet's going to look like. Click the second line, and I've got my fillet. I'm going to do it again for this corner. I'll show you just a quick little shortcut. Right click should repeat the last command. It's a really nice, fast little shortcut instead of having to go up to the ribbon to select the command over and over again. This time, notice that the fillet radius is 0.25 because that was my last fillet radius. So I don't need to set the radius again. I can just simply select the lines. And I've got my fillets. Chamfer is similar, except that chamfer gives you an angle instead of a radius. You can see an example of that here. So I'm going to put a chamfer, 0.25 by 0.25 chamfer on these bottom two corners. Select chamfer. Again, like with radius, you need to input the dimensions of that chamfer. It's not terribly obvious when you first launch the command. You can do it with different ways, distance and angles. I'm going to use D for distance, and it's going to say select the first chamfer distance. I'm going to make it 0.25. Select the second chamfer difference. I'm going to make this one 0.125 or 1/8 of an inch just to show you that you can create chamfers that aren't necessarily equal. The two distances aren't equal. Select the first line, select the second line. You can see it's sort of previewing it for me.